Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Natural Sciences Lecture Series with the Friends of San Pedro Valley Park. I'm Mila Stroganoff, Programs Director and host for this evening's webinar. The Friends of San Pedro Valley Park, I'm proud to say, have completed a 2-week course on Birding 101. We don't know much yet, but we have. And we had a cutting-edge research lecture on Zoom about great white sharks in September. I hope everyone is well and is enjoying a lovely weekend. Today is going to get even better because we have for a terrific lecture on raptors and how Bay Raptor Rescue helps them when they get hurt in our urban environment, presented by the one and only Craig Nikitas. Craig is well known to us, the Friends of San Pedro Valley Park, as well as to many other groups in the Bay Area and beyond. I will introduce Craig in just a few moments. As is my norm, I give a heads up to all attendees regarding the upcoming lecture. We have Dr. Emily Taylor, a herpetologist, who will present the secret lives of snakes on Saturday, November the 9th at 7 p.m. Emily Taylor has a passion for snakes, loves them, and tries to ameliorate the relationship that humans have with snakes. I have a feeling we will all leave with a different mindset regarding snakes after her lecture. In January and February, we have some fascinating speakers who will lecture on botany. I hope you will consider joining us. The format for this lecture will be the same as with previous ones, with a Q&A at the end. Please write questions and comments into the Q&A section. That way we'll have everything in one place. Avoid our chat because for some ungodly reason, I don't know why, it doesn't seem to want to function. So anyway, that's Q&A. I'm also pleased to inform everyone that this lecture will be recorded and posted probably within a couple of months to our website. So if your friends or you wish to,
He said months.
Oh, a couple of weeks, sorry, I always say months, couple of weeks. And if anyone wishes to view it, by all means do so on our website, friendsofsanpedrovalleypark.org. And now to our speaker. I'm delighted that Craig Nikitas has agreed to present tonight. Allow me to introduce him. Craig Nikitas is a retired urban planner and has been a wildlife volunteer working with raptors for over 50 years. His career has included caring for captive animals at the Randall Museum, Steinhart Aquarium, and the San Francisco Zoo, tending birds in rehab at WildCare, trapping and banding migratory and dispersive birds of prey for 30 years with the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory, and presenting talks on the natural history of corvids, diurnal raptors, and owls at schools, colleges, universities, local naturalist groups, parks associations, the Point Reyes Birding and Nature Festival, and to professional staff of the Lindsay Wildlife Experience, CuriOdyssey, and the San Francisco and Oakland zoos. In 2015, Craig founded Bay Raptor Rescue to provide a free service to aid predatory birds in distress. The work is done under permit from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. His work comprises trapping free-flighted birds in buildings, netting birds surrounded by illness or injury, and transporting those who need veterinary care to local rehabilitation facilities. Bay Raptor Rescue's motto is, when a raptor's in trouble, we're there on the double. So Craig, take it away.
Thank you, Mila. I appreciate the nice introduction. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about one group of the many urban wildlife animals that we see. It's, to me, astounding how many species live in the cities and suburbs among us. And today we're going to look at that group of raptors. So let me see if I can get the PowerPoint cranked up. And it's kind of a jam-packed lecture. There are going to be some simple things presented. There are going to be some very scientific, nerdy things presented. But I hope you enjoy most the recounting of some of the rescue work we do. I've got a lot of stories that you might find interesting. So we call this Helping Raptors Survive in the Human Environment. The general topics we're going to cover include what raptors are and how they get in trouble and we help them. The most common species we get, less common species we've rescued, and if I talk quickly enough, maybe we'll have time for some questions at the end. So, what are raptors? They're also called birds of prey. You know they include hawks, falcons, and eagles, but they also include vultures and kites. To catch their prey, they're really strong, fast flyers, and they have sharp talons that grab, kill, and carry off the prey, as well as strong bills that they're able to tear the meat and consume that prey. To find that prey, they have a lot of amazing adaptations, primarily their sense of sight. They can see faster, farther, clearer images than we can. They have really large eyes, both just in terms of measurement, but also in proportion to the size of their body weight and volume of their heads. Eyes consume a huge amount of space in those little skulls. They also have fast sight. There's something called the flicker fusion factor, which is the refresh rate that enables animals to see motion. You may know that if you sit in a movie theater with an old-fashioned film running, that film is actually a whole series of still photos moving quickly in front of you. And because our flicker fusion factor is only 25, you can run 30 still pictures a second. And to us, it looks like continuous motion. But to a raptor sitting in a theater, they would see 30 individual still photos a second because their flicker fusion factor, their refresh rate is 75 images a second. So they can see fast. The other thing is because their heads are small and they have huge nerve bundles going from their eyes to their brains over a short distance, that signal travels quickly into their brains for processing. Here's a diagram that shows a top view of the skull of a falcon, and it shows you how their eyes work. They have really wide cones of vision. The only blind area is that white sector at the back of the skull. They can see images, movement with varying degrees of detail, the whole rest of that circle in the blue, green, and yellow areas of those cones. They, like most vertebrates, have a camera type eye where an image goes through the pupil opening, through a lens, and it creates an image on the retina at the back of the eye, which is transmitted to the brain. We have one fovea, the focal point of that lens. They have two in each eye. And from this diagram, you can see that the green area focuses on one fovea that is for distant vision and lateral, whereas the yellow areas focus in a second fovea that enables them to have binocular vision, see directly in front of them in great detail. When they're looking in those green areas, they can focus each eye independently. The right eye might be focused on something distant and the left eye can focus on something closer. When they're in the yellow area, both eyes are focused on the same object. They can also improve the resolution, not only by changing the shape of their lens inside the eye the way we do. They also have a bone that's embedded in their eyes that changes the shape of their cornea and enables an amazing array of focus options and improved vision. So the vision is sharp also because they have a huge concentration of cones, which are nerves in the eye that enable us to see color. They have 1 million cones per square millimeter around their fovea, whereas we only have 200,000 per square millimeter. So they have 5 times the density of pixels that we do. They also have 5 types of cones, the nerves that enable them to see that color. So the diagram on the left of your screen is showing you what we see with our 3 colors of cones in the blue-purple region, in the blue-green region, and in the yellow-red-orange region. And a starling would look similar to what you see in the photograph there. But raptors have 4 colored cones, and this is what they see with those 4 cones, much richer with that tetrachromatic vision. They can see colors in ways that we can only imagine. In addition to the 4 cones, like us, they have rods that enable them to see in partial light, but they have a 5th kind of cone that's called a double cone that enables them to see motion really fast, that is in the mid frequencies between the end of the yellow and the beginning of the blue on the color spectrum. So with those amazing vision tools, it's no wonder we use the phrase eyes like an eagle. It's an astounding series of adaptations. In addition to good vision, owls have also evolved amazingly keen hearing. In part, it derives from those facial discs. This barn owl is also colloquially called a monkey face owl because of those heart-shaped discs. And they act as a parabolic antenna that focuses the sound into their ears. Their ears are below the feathers, downward and outboard of their eyes. So if a sound wave hits anywhere on that disc, it gets focused to where the arrowheads are showing you where the owl's ear are. And in addition to some neural adaptations in their brain that are probably, I don't have time to get into, but are really interesting, barn owls are able to hunt in complete darkness. They put owls in completely darkened rooms inside other rooms so no light can penetrate. And they've been able to successfully hunt and kill mice in that complete darkness using only their sense of sound, sense of hearing. So how big are raptors? They range in size. Some are small, like the screech owl, which is about 7 to 8 inches tall and has a wingspan less than 2 feet, or this sharp-shinned hawk, which is our smallest hawk in North America, similar size, about a little bit taller because of that long tail they have, but less than a 2-foot wingspan. There are some medium-sized hawks like this Cooper's hawk that are about 16 inches tall with a 2'7" average wingspan, or great horned owls, which are slightly bigger with about a 3'8" wingspan on average. And then there are some really large birds too, like this osprey that has a 5'3" average wingspan, or this turkey vulture with a 5'7" average wingspan, or this golden eagle that has a 6.5-foot wingspan. What do they eat? Part that's determined by their size. Smaller raptors take smaller prey, but they also have other adaptations that let them concentrate on certain segments of the available prey. They are known for eating rodents. They also eat rabbits, other birds. There are some raptors that specialize in bird hunting. They will eat reptiles that are available. Oftentimes you'll see a red tail flying overhead in the springtime with a snake dangling from its talons. Ospreys and some other hawks eat fish. Some eat bugs. This is a kestrel, a small falcon. Worms. It's pretty amazing after a rainstorm to see a lawn in a park with a 2-pound, 4-foot wingspan red tail pulling worms out of the ground like a robin, but they're a great source of protein. They're easy to catch. The raptor's not going to get hurt catching a worm. So it's a safe and effective form of high protein meals when they're available. And then many raptors eat carrion. Turkey vultures like this one on the deer carcass specialize in it, but other raptors also will eat carrion. It's not uncommon to see eagles on roadkill or red-tailed hawks or other raptors because they're very opportunistic, and catching and killing prey to make your living is a hard job to have and succeed at. So anything goes. Like all birds, they begin their life as eggs. This mother Cooper's hawk brooding these eggs, she'll do that for 32, 33 days, and then they will hatch into fuzzy, down-covered, fairly helpless little hatchlings, which begin to develop not only size, but to get mature feathers that allow them to thermoregulate and fly. As branchers, you can see the wing feathers are really developing. Most of the down is gone from their bodies, and they begin to leave the nest and climb around their tree and learn what the world is like. And then as a fledgling, after they've learned to fly, they still hang around the nest tree for a bit. They'll hang there for a few weeks with the parents while they learn hunting techniques and what prey is available and how to be a hawk. And as juveniles, then they disperse from the nest, find their own territories, and then a year later will molt into adult plumage and start the cycle all over again. How many species do we see here in the Bay Area? With the diurnal raptors, the hawks, falcons, eagles, etc., there are 7 common species that may breed in the Bay Area, and an additional 12 less common species, that some of which breed here, but most of them are just passing through on migration. So it's common to see, if you work hard at it, 19 different species of diurnal raptors here. And then with owls, there are 3 common species, 6 less common, again, some of which might be migrants, and giving us 9 species total here in San Francisco area. How do we help raptors? Well, Mila told you our slogan that I borrowed from Paw Patrol, which I call Claw Patrol for hawks. Raptors can get into a variety of trouble here in the human environment, but we go for those that are ill or injured, trapped in buildings because they frequently chase prey into buildings and then can't get themselves back out through the low doorways, which we'll talk about more later. Or there may be other reasons that intervention is needed. We specialize in catching raptors that are flighted. You'll see how we do that later, but we also pick up a lot of grounded birds. So a grounded bird is in trouble and definitely needs intervention. The requests come in from the public, from people calling the wildlife hospitals, who then refer those calling parties to me. Government agencies, businesses, and residents all get us requests for help. And this is based on a moral and ethical stance that we want to give the highest priority to the well-being of these animals that we take on. They shall all be treated humanely and receive the best care. As Mila mentioned, I work under permits from both the federal and state fish and wildlife agencies, and try to obey local ordinances, although hypothetically you might think that maybe once in a while speed limits or parking regulations or even trespassing laws may get violated as if we're after a bird that needs our help. If they're fit, I can release that bird outdoors near where we trapped it. If it needs veterinary care, we transport it to the nearest licensed wildlife facility. And then we don't charge reporting parties fees for services. We do appreciate donations, and many people have been generous in that regard in appreciation of the hawks we've saved for them. Raptors get in trouble because there's a lot about the human environment they haven't evolved to understand. Obviously, cars and trucks, especially a juvenile bird, may not understand how fast they move, how they move. And a collision between a 2-pound red tail and a 2-ton car doesn't end well for the red tail usually. They also have problems with glazing, windows, and even opaque walls. Collisions result because they think they can fly through the glass. They don't see it as an obstacle until they learn about it, or once trapped inside a building, they try to fly through windows or skylights to get back outside. And that kind of collision can be fatal for a bird. They don't understand doors. As I mentioned earlier, they often chase prey, especially flying prey, into buildings, and then once inside get confused. And their tendency is to fly upward. And if, especially in an industrial building or large one that has skylights or high clear story windows, they go upward, and all that human activity on the ground dissuades them from flying back down low enough to get out in many cases. Sometimes a bird can be trapped in a building for a couple of days and still find its way out. But if they've been in there a while, usually they need our help. So we capture the bird, examine it, and then release it outside if we can. Netting and fences, and the worst of all, barbed wire, are horrible for birds. We'll take a look at some rescues of that later. And then, of course, poisons have had a huge impact on our local raptor populations. Please do not use rodenticides. A rodent that eats some of the modern ones that are called single feed, like decon, will wander around for a while as it's dying and become easy pickings. So when you're poisoning rodents, you're also poisoning the predators that eat on them. WildCare and a few of the other rehab places did blood work on most of the raptors that were brought into them over a 2-year period. And virtually every raptor that came in was carrying some degree of a rodenticide load. If the load gets too heavy, it overwhelms their internal organs. Some of those rodenticides cause internal bleeding, and the predator bleeds to death internally and sometimes actually drowns in its own blood. It's horrible. There are better ways to control rodents. Please don't use rodenticides. So how do we catch them? The first question is, can the bird fly? If the answer is no, we can usually chase it down and hand net it. If the bird is injured or ill, we obviously have to be very careful doing that. Some birds that have wing injuries but are otherwise alert and intact can be amazingly fast runners. Cooper's hawks with wing injuries that are outdoors can end up leading me on a really merry chase. The red tails are a little slower and I can usually run them down, but Cooper's hawks are like road runners if both legs are working well. So that's what I mean by cursorial species. They're species that can run, and birds like Cooper's hawks sometimes actually chase down prey on foot, like little velociraptors. We ask the question again, can the bird fly? And if the answer is yes, then a hand net won't work. So we use a trap. It consists often of a cage that has a live lure animal inside it. I use non-native birds that are unharmed in this process. I've had some of them for years. I care for them. I love them. I've named them. They're my coworkers. The other issue with these traps is that they can be dangerous for the raptors if they are not secured. So safety, both in terms of the raptor flying down to the trap and not hitting obstacles, and in terms of after it's on the trap, dragging it around and hurting itself, are two issues that are always at the forefront of my mind when we're trapping them. So this is how it works. The trap that you see on the right here has caught this male Cooper's hawk that was inside a fruit warehouse for a couple of days. when the hawk comes down and tries to catch the lure bird, and that sparrow is Major Tom. And by the way, for you David Bowie fans, his companion is named Ground Control. You can see Major Tom isn't having any of it and is way over at the other side of the trap because the hawk's toes get caught in those monofilament nooses that you see there. And then in this case, I've secured the trap to screws I put into the ceiling of that room that's below, so the trap can't be dragged around by the Cooper's hawk and like fall over the edge and hurt the bird. So that's how that kind of Balchatri trap works, and it's a frequent and often first choice. Sometimes, if the hawk has a leg injury, we're not going to use a leg trap to catch it. This sharp-shinned hawk that you see up in the ceiling of an old wooden grocery store in Bolinas was flying around inside the store, and I noticed it had a broken leg. And when I caught it and took it to WildCare, the radiograph here shows you that the tibiotarsus bone, which is like equivalent to the bones in the top of our foot that are fused into the exposed part of the bird's leg, that fracture was eventually reset, and the bird healed, and in 4 weeks was released back out into the wilds of Bolinas. But here's how I caught it without using a leg trap. This is a bow net. It's a spring-loaded trap, and the cage in the middle has 2 sparrows in it. The sharpshin, even with its injury, was very interested in getting the sparrows, and when it landed in the trap and safely folded its wings, I pulled the trigger, which springs the trap and catches the bird. Sometimes we need to use stealth, and of course that stealth fighter you're seeing there is the F-22 Raptor, the best fighter there is. This is my associate Peter, who is really helpful on captures. He's really good at spotting birds. And also I like to have him around because his jokes are even worse than mine. And then another form of stealth is, for instance, if I'm using that bow net, I need to be able to see the hawk land on the net, but I don't want the hawk to see me. So in this artist's warehouse, the bow net was around the corner on the other side of the wall, and I hid under this piece of cardboard and eventually caught the hawk. This is it. It was flying around in this artist's warehouse for about 4 days. And with a lot of patience, eventually we were able to get it and set it loose outside. This rescue I'm going to show you now took place in a really busy and extremely noisy cable factory. There are machinery everywhere. All of it made noise. It was a horrible environment. Plus, it's always great to work in a place where they have radiation signs warning you to stay back. But the poor red-tailed hawk who was in here was hiding back in the corner on one of the cross braces in the ceiling there. So I thought the best place to put the trap was near it and up off the floor. You can see all the clutter on the floor here. So I moved the box off that orange machine, whatever it is, and ended up setting a trap there. And the hawk did come down on the trap and was safely caught and released outside. So sometimes we need to get the trap up off the floor. This is a Richmond schoolhouse with really narrow corridors with a sharp-shinned hawk up in those high windows you see there. And the sill was so deep that when it was sitting up there, it couldn't see the floor at all. So I ended up screwing the trap to the high windowsill up there above this ladder so I could catch it. Sometimes get to use cool machinery. This is a warehouse picker that I'm using to set a trap high on shelving. This was a forklift that they lifted me up on so I could set the trap on top of that refrigerator unit. This was a scissor lift that I used to catch that Cooper's hawk in the fruit warehouse that you saw earlier. And this is almost my own personal lift at a BART station in San Francisco, because I've taken 3 hawks out of that by using that lift to get up and setting the hawk's trap up on a high concrete beam. So this is the payoff to me. There's no better feeling than catching a hawk and knowing that it's fit, it's been well fed, it's in great condition, and I can release it outside to let it return to its own wild life. Sometimes we do ground releases where the hawk is released from the ground. If you're in a big open area, there are no vehicles around, no other predators. I'm sorry the video wasn't smooth there, but it was pretty astounding how quickly that Cooper's hawk exploded out of the box. It's a pity it didn't play smoothly. This is releasing an osprey on top of a roof at the marina so that it could be above the roadway and get its bearings after having been in rehab for a couple of weeks before taking off to find its territory. And another elevated relief situation in San Francisco where this red-tailed hawk was in rehab for a few days or weeks, a couple of weeks. And you don't want to release it down on the sidewalk where it's going to fly across the street and get hit by a car. So I was able to talk to the owner of the building and get up on this fire escape and let it off the fire escape so it could fly safely. I want to give you just a quick overview of 1 year's worth of rescues by month, so you can kind of see the annual cycle that happens. There are big peaks in May, June, July, when nestlings are fledging and ending up on the ground or in trouble. And then after that, they're still fairly high numbers because during that first year of life, most raptors don't survive. Estimates range from 50 to 80% of first-year raptors dying before they reach maturity. Some of them have accidents. Some of them never really understand how to be a good hunter. And all it takes is the slightest bit of bad luck to end a raptor's life because they live kinetic, high-speed, violent lives of catching other animals. These 2022 statistics are very old. In 2023 and 2024, those numbers would have been doubled. And for the same year, I have stats that will show you the various species and quantities of each. Again, in the past 2 years, there would be 5 or 6 more species there, and the owl numbers would be high, rivaling those you see of the Cooper's hawk. Quickly, that's American crow, barn owl, common raven, Cooper's hawk, great blue heron, great horned owl, merlin, peregrine falcon, red-shouldered hawk, red-tailed hawk again with another big peak, sharp-shinned hawks, turkey vultures, and western screech owls. In this last year, I have never seen so many barn owls in my life. We've rescued probably 30 or 40 barn owls this year. So I need to update those stats. These are the common species that you already heard me mention. Cooper's hawks are generally our #1 customer. They're amazing forest hawks that have really, really quick acceleration. They hunt by perching among branches. When they see prey, which is usually another bird, they just sprint off the branch and take it by surprise. They have short wings and long tails that enable them to fly through brush and branches and chase their prey down. This is a juvenile Cooper's hawk, a few weeks off the nest that we caught. I just wanted to show you what they're like in person when they're angry or upset. They raise hackles at the back of their head, giving their head kind of a square look. And that's their distress call. He wasn't happy about being held by a big ape. I also want to show you with Cooper's hawks the plumage differences between juvenile birds and adult birds. Here are two in nearly the same posture, and you can compare how the plumage changes as they become adults. The brown head gets a dark charcoal gray cap. The eye turns from yellow to redder and redder and redder with each successive year. The nape has a light gray color, and the breast, instead of having brown streaks on a cream background, has horizontal rufous or rusty colored barring that can be very dense and almost solid at the breast with some birds. So this poor Cooper's hawk was chasing a bird that was able to fly through that woven wire fence, but it unfortunately didn't make it through the fence. It has one leg in, one leg out. Its head is through, its body isn't. One wing is in, the other wing is on the other side. And it took quite a while to disentangle it from that. But fortunately, the hawk was not injured. And the short video you're about to see will give you the visual of the very last few seconds of extracting. It actually took me about 4 or 5 minutes to get the bird loose. And it's a adult male Cooper's hawk and was fit enough to release on site. I want to just give you a sense of all the places that Cooper's hawks have gotten into trouble over a 2 or 3 year period here. And the first one was in a metal shop. Here's one that was in a church in San Mateo. Grocery stores are common because they leave the back door, big doors open, and birds come in to eat some of the spilled food, and Cooper's hawks come in to eat the birds. So Naval Shipyard, getting stuck in light wells in the city is a common thing that happens to hawks. That one that just disappeared off to the left was in a chicken coop in Novato, glass factory, Hayward liquor store. It says Alameda, but actually that was a Treasure Island storage facility, a brickyard, San Ramon Library, San Francisco residence. This hawk was loose inside a tractor store in Brentwood. The Ferry Building in San Francisco, a microbrewery on Alameda Island, a high school, an airplane hangar. That hangar floor was immaculate. You could eat off that floor. And the Cooper's hawk actually did. It killed a bird in there. Parking garages are also common because they're often open on the sides. A residential hotel in Marin County, a San Jose metal shop, an Oakland cabinet shop, a batting cage at a San Jose high school. That's an adult coop I'm holding there. Richmond Elementary School. And then I want to end with this guy. It's absolutely remarkable. You can see when I hold the birds, I do it by controlling their legs. They can't fly off. And then they also can't foot me with their talons. But in this case, I'm not holding legs, I'm holding a leg. Surprisingly, this bird suffered an injury that amputated its foot at the top of the tarsometatarsus. The wound was healed over, so the wound happened weeks ago, and the bird itself was well fed. It had great body condition. It was very fit. So it was surviving as a juvenile bird with only 1 foot to catch its prey. It's pretty remarkable, the spirit and adaptability that shows. And then here's a Cooper's hawk release. It's in slow motion. If I did it at normal speed, I wouldn't have been able to move the camera fast enough to keep up with it. They are really fast accelerating birds when they take off. And the gull decided that it didn't really need to sit there after all and let the hawk have the perch. So a lot of times we get calls, people who aren't familiar with birds, and most people who have not been close to raptors are always amazed at how large they actually are. And they have a red-tailed hawk in their yard and they think it might be an eagle. But I want to show you quickly some of the red tails we've rescued both outdoors and indoors. I can see I've been talking a lot and I'm running out of time. So we're going to kind of speed through this without a lot of narrative, but it gives you a sense. Most of those birds are juvenile birds. Occasionally we do get an adult bird. Juvenile bird has a brown stripy tail like that. The adult bird gets the brick red, orangey colored tail that gives the hawk its name. I'm going to skip through this quickly. It was an outdoor capture of a wing-injured red tail. There it is on the side of the rocky face there. And this is where I quickly learned if you're going to hand net a bird, make sure you have really good footing, because as the bird took off and tried to glide downhill, I slid 20 feet down the rock face with that result, but did eventually catch the bird and get it to rehab. Another common customer we have are red-shouldered hawks. They're slightly smaller than red tails, but closely related. And I say checks and crescents there because checks is the checkered wings they have, and crescents are those translucent panels in the end of their wings that you can see when the hawk is backlit. And that's a way to ID the bird in flight, checkers or crescents. Quickly, here are some red shoulders that we picked up. That was an adult bird with a dense red barring on the breast. This was inside a Berkeley apartment house. It was flying around. That was in a San Francisco park and a parking garage. This rescue was kind of interesting. The poor bird, I think, was hit by a car or had a collision with a building or a car and had neural damage and couldn't see well. Unfortunately, I didn't have my net with me, so my son and I made a net out of blanket, long sticks we found in duct tape, and we were able to sneak up on the bird when it was in a bush, and he put the net over it, and I grabbed its legs underneath, and we were able to get it to rehab. Owls comprise a large number of our rescues. Those were the 3 common species that we'll see in a little more detail here. Great horned owls are large, fierce, top predators. There's a juvenile on the left that couldn't fly well and was in a canal. The one in the middle, like many, many raptors, got caught in soccer netting that was left out overnight on a field. As bad as that looks, we were able to cut it out of the netting, and the bird had no injuries and was released the next day after a trip to the hospital for x-rays. This is a baby owl whose nest blew down. This young great horned is enjoying a little snack at WildCare there. They frequently swallow rodents whole. And there's a close-up of a beautiful owl face. This poor guy got tangled up in fishing line that someone had tied to a roof in Pleasant Hill, maybe to keep pigeons away, but the owl's wing feathers were caught in it. By the time we got there, it was dark, but I was able to get a ladder up toward the parapet, net the bird, and I had duct taped a razor knife onto a long pole, and while holding the owl in one hand, was able to cut the line with the other hand and get it to rehab, where it recovered and was released. This poor guy is caught in exclusionary netting that was put up at a hospital where they were trying to keep pigeons and gulls out of the courtyard. So you can see that its left wing has a carpal joint through the netting, and there's just no way to get itself out. So I couldn't reach it, called the fire department. Station 10 sent a ladder truck, and for some crazy reason, they let me climb up it to get the owl out. When I got to the top, I was able to grab the owl with one hand and use surgical scissors to cut the netting out in a square so that we could then get the owl down safely at the bottom. And there, the fireman cut the netting as I was holding the owl and showing him where to cut. And that owl was in rehab for almost 4 weeks. It didn't have any breaks. It didn't have any sprains, but it did have a lot of soft tissue bruising and swelling. So after I got it checked out at WildCare, I drove it up to Sonoma County, where there was a big flight cage where it could recover in. And it was released last week after 4 weeks in rehab. So this is a nighttime photo of a barn owl, the second common owl that we have around here. This was a nest box, and the owl is sitting on top of the box. You can see how ghostly they are and how reflective their retinas are, which is common among nocturnal animals that helps them grab every bit of light they can to see. And this is what they look like during the day. This was a wing-injured female in Richmond that I hand netted. And now brace yourselves, you're not going to believe this. Oh, sorry, let me back that up. This is worth hearing. Some of the movies and animations aren't working well. Let's see if this does it. That call they make as a threat is deafening. You can see maybe where the legends of banshees, flying white ghosts, came from, wailing like a banshee, because it's astounding that that little animal can make that horrible loud sound. And then as soon as it's free, the sound stops. This barn owl flew down someone's chimney and was in the firebox, and I was able to get it out. I'll quickly run through this too. This was a nest box relocation. There was an active nest for several years in the box, but as you can see, the tree it's on died. They were worried about the tree falling over in a storm and hurting the owls or causing property damage or injury to people. So I worked out a plan and received permission from the state to take the babies out of the nest. We put up a new nest box in a healthy tree nearby the old one and put the babies inside, and then hid in the car at night to be sure the parents found the babies in the new box. The babies do begging calls at night to be fed. That's the shadow of Dad perched near the new box. And there's Dad popping into the box with prey to feed the kids. And here he is coming back out empty beaked. So that nest transfer was a success. These animals are amazingly good parents. They are determined to stay with their kids no matter where the kid's up, whether it's on the ground or in a nearby tree. They protect them and feed them. We're going to quickly run through the third common species. This is the little western screech owl. These two were in a fireplace, and I had to take apart the metal damper and spring and the lever to get a net up there to get them out. And then a woodpecker put a hole in this guy's roof, and that's what it looked like from the attic. And it was an inviting place for this screech owl to come in. So I was able to catch the owl because it was not nesting season. There was nothing going on. It was just sleeping in there, and put screen on there to keep it out. So those were the common species. We're going to quickly run through the once in a whilers, the less common species like this burrowing owl. I've had a series of 4 burrowing owl captures in the last 3 weeks. They're an unusual bird in San Francisco. They were recently made candidates for listing as endangered because their habitat has been so decimated by development, farming, residential construction, that they virtually disappeared from most of their territories. They do live in burrows. The name is accurate, and they raise their young in them, and they're really amazing owls that are diurnal. And unlike every other raptor species in North America, the females are smaller than the males. Other raptors have reverse dimorphism, where the females are larger than the males, unlike mammals. Ospreys are large fish-eating hawks, also called sea eagles. This one was in Richmond Harbor, where it had fishing line wrapped around its leg, and the line got tangled into a blanket that was wet, and the bird could not get out of the water. After a few days or a few weeks in rehab, where the line had to be surgically removed from its leg where it was embedded, it was able to be released. So I put it on the roof of that boat repair shed, and it took a while to get its bearings, see where it was, and then off it flew. This next one is another nest issue. Out at the end of that jetty is a man-made nest platform that has been used by a pair of ospreys for quite a while. Unfortunately, somehow the female bird got this construction fabric tangled in her foot and couldn't get it off. She was able to fly around with it, but she wasn't able to hunt. It was a time of the year when she was mostly on eggs, so the male was feeding her, but later on when the fledglings matured and she should go out and help hunt, she wouldn't have been able to. We were also worried that the fabric might damage the eggs or get one of the chicks entangled in it and be a tragic situation. So again, I got permission from Fish and Wildlife to, quote, enter a nest, and I built a special trap. We walked out on the jetty. I put together a big team. I think Jen Gale might be in the audience. Hi, Jen, thanks for helping with this. And we were able to measure it. I built a special trap that clipped onto the metal grating and spanned over the eggs so the eggs wouldn't get damaged. That's the trap. It was held on with carabiners. We put a nice fresh fish inside it. She came down, tried to get the fish, was caught on the trap, and we were able to get the fabric off her and set her free so she could go about her job of raising more ospreys. And off she goes. This is the fabric. It was 28 inches wide and 21 inches top to bottom. And there she is, brooding the eggs that eventually hatched into 3 fledglings. And that's the team we put together to do this. It was a complicated job. And then we've got to spend some time talking about the most royal of birds, the peregrine falcon. They are the fastest animal on Earth. They can fly 1,000 feet up into the air, close their wings partway, and hurtle down to the ground at over 220 miles an hour. They have special adaptations that enable them to do that. In the wild, they nest on cliff faces, usually near water, but in cities, they've adapted to high-rise buildings and use them as cliffs and nest on the roofs. There are a bunch of them around. Almost all of them have teams of people who monitor the nest, watch the fledglings grow, and if they get into trouble, help them. Because learning to fly, they often end up on the ground, and in the city, that can be fatal. This bird was one of the hatchlings on a PG&E building. She was named Rachel. I don't remember the names of her nest mates, but she ended up taking an early flight on a windy day that blew her from the financial district in San Francisco into the water of the bay past the Embarcadero. Through some miracle, she was able to find the seawall stairs and walk up the stairs onto the Embarcadero roadway where a pedestrian saw her. It was right in front of Station 35, the fireboat fire station. So she got the firefighters out there. They dropped a blanket over her, put her in a box, and called me at 9:30 at night. I said, I'll be right there. And so when we got to the fire station, they handed me this sopping wet peregrine. Because of the color band on there, I was able quickly to find out which falcon this was, where she came from, because we know who bans the groups of peregrine falcons around here. And it turned out that she was Rachel from the PG&E building. At night, I brought her home, and while I held her here in our guest room, my wife toweled her off. We got her as dry as she could. The next morning, ran her to WildCare for a checkup. She was in perfect health. So we arranged with PG&E security to go up to the 32nd floor where the nest box is. And here I am putting her out on the roof so she could go to the nest box. You can see how grateful she is as she tries to bite my face twice. And then she gives me this look that says, don't ever come here again. Quickly run through this if I can. This bird was wing injured. There you see the hand net. I'm taking it out of the net, and it had an open fracture on its wing, which is usually a fatal injury for this bird, because when they injure their wings, the injury has to heal perfectly for them to survive. They fly so quickly and at such large game, often taking ducks that weigh as much or more than they do, and other water birds. Everything has to be perfect or they're not going to make it. The other thing you'll notice is when I'm taking a bird out of a net or a trap, I don't wear gloves. I want to be able to feel how hard I'm gripping it. I want the dexterity to remove the netting from their talons. I don't want gloves to peel feathers off them as I'm holding them. I want my hand free so I can feel their keel bone, their breast, just feel their crop to see if they've eaten, to open their bill and look inside their mouth. So gloves don't work. But the fact is, if you handle raptors without gloves, you're going to get bit. One of the most the most popular nest cams is at the Berkeley Campanile, where the cow falcons have nested over the years, with lots of marital drama, changing husbands. One poor father died, was hit by a car. The mom disappeared for a couple of weeks and came back. But these birds are so popular that anybody who's into raptors at all probably pays attention to the nest cam up there. So this year they hatched 4 birds named Solstice, Aurora, Equinox, and some other astronomical event name that escaped me. But Equinox was the youngest, also called Knox for short, a young male who had quite an adventure. I got a call from staff at Berkeley Marina that there was a peregrine sitting on the hull of a boat. It couldn't fly, they thought. So I got over there as quickly as I could. I knew as soon as I stepped on the boat, the falcon would jump into the water to try to get away. So I put my wallet, watch, key fob on the dock and carefully set foot on the boat, hiding myself behind the big mast. But as soon as it felt me get on the boat, Knox jumped into the water. It's surprising to a lot of people that raptors can swim. I pulled several out of the water, including a great horned owl that was very calmly trying to breaststroke across the creek to get away from me. So Knox fortunately was close to the dock. I jumped off the boat, ran down the dock, and was able to net it out of the water. And again, a sopping wet peregrine falcon. The marina staff person helped dry it off and took it to WildCare. I again quickly was able to find out both from the blue tape on the Fish and Wildlife band and the band number that this was Knox from the Campanile, because it actually could have been a San Francisco bird that flew across the bay. But Knox, unfortunately, had 2 broken bones in its wing. That's the carpometacarpus. There's a major one and a minor one, and both of them were fractured. The good thing is that it was well away from the joint and a fairly clean break without a lot of bone fragments. But if this was something less spectacular than one of the cow falcon peregrines, Knox might not have survived, because what it needed was special surgery. I drove it up to the UC Davis Veterinary Hospital, and it's a training facility where they do advanced surgery on exotic animals. And they were willing to do this very special surgery. There you see Knox under anesthesia while the surgeon is applying this device that was developed in France. And the radiograph here shows you they put 3 pins into the bones on either side of the breaks, align the bones, and then put this external metal appliance called a fixator on top of it that attaches to the pins to hold it in place while the bones knit. Bird bones grow really quickly. A break for you or me might take 6 or 8 weeks to heal. In a bird, it can heal in 2 or 3 weeks. And so after surgery, they wrap the fixator with foam and tape, and they put dummy tape around it. So if Knox tried to peel it off, he'd be working on the tape that isn't really doing anything and keep that in place. And then yesterday, after weeks of recovery, physical therapy, being with a falconer to build up strength and stamina and show the ability to kill wild animals to survive, I got the good news that Knox was released in Berkeley yesterday, wearing a little satellite transmitter on his back too, so they'll be able to follow Knox around for a year. Usually those transmitters are attached with cotton thread that doesn't interfere with the bird's motion. And after a year, the cotton rots and the transmitter falls off. And then, the bird can molt and get on with its life. Other little falcons we've rescued are merlins. They're great birds. That gorgeous thing is an adult male merlin. These are kestrels, our smallest and most colorful falcons. And then once in a while, someone says there's an eagle in their yard, and it actually is. This was a golden eagle rescued in Portola Valley. This one was from Vallejo, and they're so big, I often don't have room for a carrier that can accommodate them. So somebody drives in the car while I hold the eagle in the back seat. Here's my wife, Lori, driving her car and me with a golden eagle in back. And they're very bossy birds. They, are always telling people what to do, and they can't pass up a squirrel. Pretty amazing bird. If that was a bald eagle, there's no way I would have my face unprotected that near it. Bald eagles are incredibly bitey and sort of hostile. This bird, because it was injured and because it had a more mellow personality, I'd been already holding it for 30 minutes and felt like I could trust it not to grab my face. But what you don't want is for the talons to grab you. Those are the talons of that eagle. On the left, I'm holding it in the car, and on the right, it's in rehab. And you can see what effective weapons those are for catching prey. Bald eagles, the juvenile ones, look similar to golden eagles in that they're brown, but they don't acquire the white head and the bright white tail that you think of bald eagles having until they're 4 to 5 years old. This bird was interesting because it was missing a talon on that toe. And after rehab, where it healed its broken coracoid, which is a shoulder bone they have, but we don't, it was released. This bird eventually went on to be the mother of several broods of bald eagles in Alameda, where the people watching the nest there, for some reason, named her Big Junior. But anyway, it was great that she was able to get back into the wild and reproduce. White-tailed kites are small rodent-eating birds that are amazingly beautiful, sort of fragile too. Occasionally we get those. Sharp-shinned hawk. Turkey vultures. The bird on the right that just disappeared had actually been shot in the wing by some idiot, and had to be euthanized, unfortunately. We don't only do raptors. If there's a predatory bird that needs some help, we have rescued herons, egrets, cormorants, murres, and then arguably the most dangerous bird in a rehab situation, the great blue heron. My motto is keep the stabby part away from your face. And there I am with a vet tech at the Wildlife Center of Silicon Valley, and I'm holding the bird while she's examining it. Pelican that we rescued very near where I live. It was an easy jaunt over to Glen Canyon to get this guy out of a tree where he'd been sitting all day. He was emaciated. There he is at WildCare after having been weighed. I just think that's so cool that there's a pelican on the floor of the hospital there. I get a kick out of that picture. And then other birds that we've occasionally helped are the corvid family: crows, magpies, jays, and ravens. These are all baby crows that needed help. And here's a hint for you photographers out there: when you're holding a crow and want to take a picture of it, don't wear a black shirt. And then the last thing here is escaped falconry birds. We've caught 4 of them over the years. 3 of them have been escaped Harris's hawks, which are not native to this area, and we don't want them running around loose. There you see the falconer's bell and one of the jesses they use to control the bird. The bell helped save that bird's life because it flew into the tules and I couldn't see it too well, but as I was walking along the edge, I heard the bell. So I waded into the creek and was able to net it and get it out and work with state fish and wildlife to ensure it found a home with a licensed falconer who could take care of it. This is a juvenile Harris's hawk that I took out of the classroom of a law school downtown. The owner had been doing abatement work where people hire him to use his raptors to chase off pesky crows or pigeons or gulls for places around airports or apartment houses or schools. And the bird was mobbed by crows and flew downtown, and he was looking for it for weeks and was really grateful to get it back. We were able to track him down because of the numbered band there called the breeder. The breeder said, yeah, I sold that bird to so-and-so, and we were able to contact him. This was a non-native hybrid falcon that was turned loose. Sweet little bird. If I had a falconry license, I would have kept it. But there he is in our guest room, and then eventually found a falconer in the Central Valley who bred this kind of bird and was willing to take it. So finally, even though there are a lot more stories and photos, I got to wrap it up. I want to thank you for your interest in raptors and for being here tonight. And thank you for whatever you can do to help our wild birds. So if you want to submit questions, Mila will field them and pass them on to me. While we do that for a while, I'm going to leave this slide up in case there's any information that might be useful to you there. Mila, it's all yours.
Mary, this lecture has been recorded and it will be posted on the Friends website, which is friendsofsanpedrovalleypark.org. We don't send out the lecture webinars to individuals. So all you have to do is go to our website and you will have it. It will be up there shortly. Now, here's a question to you. What percentage of birds do you feel are healthy enough for release right at point of capture, Craig?
It varies with the year and the season. Sometimes we pick up young birds that are healthy, but they're too young to be out of the nest. So we make an effort to re-nest them, which may require taking them away, tending to them for a few days until we can arrange to get a ladder or permission from whoever to get the bird back into its nest. But I would guess that probably a third to a half of the birds I rescue are fit and released on site. If it's a bad year, like a year or two ago, we had a rampaging, highly pathogenic avian influenza known as bird flu that some birds like ducks could carry without symptoms, but they would spread it. But other birds like the corvids and the raptors would contract it, and it was universally fatal. So I picked up quite a few birds that year that were suffering from HPAI, and had to be taken, even though they couldn't be cured, because you don't want to leave a carcass that's infected lying around for other animals to get. So during that year, maybe a higher percentage of them were not released. But generally, if the bird has been in a building and I can observe it flying around, when I catch it, I check its mouth for moisture to be sure it's not clinically dehydrated. I check its body condition to see, if it's well fed. If it's clinically emaciated, it needs to be taken to the hospital, because if you give a bird like that, that is so down, solid food, the metabolic load to digest that food can kill the bird. So birds that are really emaciated and subdued and lethargic have to be fed with a tube, and they're given liquid nutrients and ringer solution that has electrolytes and to hydrate and give them nutrients until they gradually recover and then can be given solid food. I kind of went into the weeds with that question, but
Well, they do suffer from shock. So in other words, I suppose they have to overcome the shock before they can even.
yeah, I think that most of them have enough of a constitution that they recover from trauma, they recover from fright, they even recover from injuries fairly quickly. If it's a really severe injury, and certain species of raptors are more susceptible to kind of a depression after being injured and being put in rehab than others. Cooper's hawks, kites, ospreys, are all very, red shoulders too, to some extent, are tricky to handle in captivity. I would say not so much because of shock, but because of a kind of depression, and they even if they're healthy, they don't self-feed and have to be force-fed for a while and until they adjust to being in the hospital environment. The their resilience and constitution, especially psychologically, is pretty remarkable. I've seen, medium or small size raptors hit by cars, and there's still so much spirit and fight left in them, that, we've got to do everything we can to give them a chance, because if you give them a chance, they'll take it.
Well, it's phenomenal that they have adjusted as well as they have. I mean, considering all the buildings, considering all the dangers that they have. It's phenomenal that they're doing as well as they are, I think.
Yeah, the raptor populations in the Bay Area, other than a couple of them that are having habitat issues like the burrowing owl I mentioned, the population of Cooper's hawks has really rebounded since the banning of DDT. They, ospreys, bald eagles, pelicans, all had huge population crashes in the late 60s because of DDT. And once it was banned in North America, they've rebounded. So
your favorite cat is with you, I gather?
I didn't know you could see the screen. I thought it was still showing me.
No.
Okay, well.
And then Mary Ellen continues with asking about which species are under the most risk in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I think the eagle species, especially the Goldens, primarily because of rodenticide use, and eagles are often shot in agricultural areas where they raise sheep or chickens, because their prey is money out of the pockets of the people who make a living raising them. The burrowing owl I mentioned too is under enormous environmental pressure.
But where do they make their homes, these burrowing owls?
Well, there what's called a hybrid population, in that some of them are sedentary, but some of them migrate. And the ones that migrate often occupy territories that the sedentary ones are in too. There's a colony in Chavez Park in Berkeley. There are some in the South Bay. There are some in Tracy. And once the ones in Tracy had young owls, crazy photographers descended on the tiny little field they were living in across the street from a high school in Tracy in such numbers. And these photographers had no respect for the ethics of wild animal photography. They were going up to the burrows and sticking their camera lenses down the burrows. They were arranging sticks and stuff around the entries of the burrows to try to get the owls to perch on the sticks so they'd be high enough that they could photograph them above the grass. They were insane. So I went out there. I made that round trip drive to Tracy 4 days in a row, going out there with signs, trying to get Fish and Wildlife, law enforcement to make these people obey the laws and respect these burrowing owls. But they were so intent on getting these fabulous photos. I mean, you saw how cute they are. They're incredibly photogenic little owls and interesting as hell. I understand people's attraction. And finally, Fish and Wildlife were able to enlist the Tracy police, who would patrol the area around there. And if they saw people there, they were forbidding them to walk onto the park area or the field area. They could take photos from the sidewalk only. There were 3 separate burrows there. And over the course of time, these photographers were there. One of the adult males disappeared from the 3 pair, and 2 of the young didn't make it, whether it was from stress or other causes. But we had no business harassing those guys when they're on the edge of extinction. I mentioned they're candidates for listing on in the state endangered species list, and in 18 months they'll make a decision whether to list them. But in those 18 months, they have the same protection that an endangered animal would. Other things, I mean, a lot of the local populations are doing well. I mentioned Cooper's hawks. Red-shouldered hawks are very abundant. They have a robust population in the Bay Area. Red-tailed hawks, everybody knows red-tailed hawks.
We have lots of them.
Yeah,
We have a pair
they're
that comes
doing
back every year, and when I hear the screeching of the young one, you know, the
Yes.
hatchling.
Yeah,
I don't know
feed
whether
me.
it's a hatchling or a fledgling, but whichever it is, he's flying, but he's screeching
Yeah, if it's
from
flying, it's a fledgling. And yeah, they, as I mentioned with the Cooper's hawks, they hang around the parents for 2 or 3 weeks to learn the ropes. And in the meantime, the parents feed them less and less. The one way the parents get them to learn to fly too is the fledgling will fly to a nearby tree and sit there and beg. And the parents will come by with food and then perch far away to make the bird fly over to them to get the food. And eventually they just quit feeding them, and the kids have to go out and find their
I'm
own
always
apartment
pleased.
and get a job.
I'm absolutely delighted when the red-tailed young ones are just screeching all day. I mean, initially it was sort of like, what is this? What is screeching? What is it that's, you know, so
Yeah.
annoyed? And it's like, it goes on for about 2.5, 3 months, day
Well,
in, really,
it
day
shouldn't be
in,
that long, but yeah.
day out.
I've had several calls from people, in fact, concerned about this one particular red-tailed hawk in Berkeley that would perch prominently in the top of an evergreen. And I got calls from 3 different neighbors, all saying this bird needs help. It's just sitting there all day. And I said, leave it alone. In a week, it'll be gone. And it will.
And then I've seen the parents feeding the fledglings when in flight. You know, the fledgling would literally take the
The
food
handoff. Yep.
while on the wing.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's absolutely fascinating, because I thought it was the reverse. I thought the bird was stealing from another bird, but it wasn't. It was, you know, being fed in order to be taught how to fly, you know, and get some practice flying. But so it was absolutely remarkable. There's a lot of wildlife here in Pacifica, and we're very lucky to have all of this around us. Sometimes I speak to the neighbors and they haven't even noticed. So they're saying, I said, there's a baby hawk. So what's the difference? And I'm going, well, if you hear the screeching, it's the baby red tail. So don't worry about it. It's just out there, and thank goodness we have another couple of young, or maybe one young one that's going to become an adult eventually. My question is whether or not the birds all sort of take the same length of time to mature. From the time they leave the nest and are actually able to fly, their plumage is one color, and they are still juveniles. But from the state of being a juvenile to the state of being an adult, does it take the same amount of time for all birds, or does it vary from species to species?
The simple answer is most raptors around here take a year to mature from a juvenile to an adult bird. The exceptions are Swainson's hawks, which we didn't get to talk about, which are highly migratory raptors that are common during the nesting season in the Central Valley and in parts of, say, Contra Costa County. They take several years, and they go from juvenile not to adult plumage, but to subadult plumage.
Mm.
And the same thing is true of both eagle species. The eagle species go from juvenile in their first year to first year subadult, second year subadult, third year subadult, fourth year subadult, and usually at the end of that, they are fully mature. For instance, the bald eagle will go from being all brown with a brown bill as a juvenile through the years. And as it matures, eventually starting to get a white head in its third or fourth year, but it'll have a lot of brown in it. And then it'll get that pure white head the fourth or fifth year. And the bill during that time also turns from brown to yellow.
And Ellen was asking whether there is anything that we as lay people can do to assist in some way. I mean, other than using rodenticides, besides going out and using guns and shooting these poor birds for those who do that. Lord knows why, but they do. Is there anything else that we can in some way assist these birds?
Not specifically. What comes to mind to me is anything you can do to help the environment not only helps us, but it helps all animals.
Mm.
There is something specific people can do, as I mentioned and is obvious. Glazing is a hazard to birds.
Glazing.
So if glazing, glass, windows. So if you have a house with big windows that faces trees or shrubbery or areas where birds forage or roost or hunt or whatever they do, that's a hazard. And there are measures people can take. One is like putting a lot of plants inside the house and the windows so that the bird sees it's not a place to fly through. A more effective thing to do are visual treatments. There's a film you can buy that we see as transparent. We see through it perfectly, but it reflects the ultraviolet end of the spectrum where the birds can see and we can't. So they see reflections from this film on the glass and know that it's an obstacle. Another thing that's effective is called fritting, with little white dots that are spaced a couple inches apart.
Mm-hmm.
In San Francisco and a few other municipalities, we've passed bird-safe ordinances that require buildings to take measures that reduce glazing collisions, either with films or ultraviolet reflecting glass, or fritting, where like a little ceramic dot every 2 inches, white dot, is placed on the glass. And when you're inside a building looking out, you don't even notice the dots, but the birds see them. So that's a specific thing that could help birds. Do what you can to dissuade collisions with glass in your own house. Drive safely. Another thing is a lot of raptors, especially vultures, but the other ones who eat carrion, get hit by cars when there's roadkill. and they're flying down to the roadkill as a car is coming and the car hits them before they get to it. Drive safely, be aware of that. If it's safe to do so, what I've done is if I see a dead raccoon or a possum in the middle of the road, I'll stop and grab the carcass and throw it off to the side of the road so that animals who want to eat the carrion aren't endangering themselves with cars.
Ah,
I can't think of anything else right now, but I'm sure there are a lot of other good ideas too.
is the with the change of homes with or location, perhaps more the point, where they have the owl houses and you're moving the owl house from one tree to another tree nearby, but which is more alive and more probably will be around longer. It's more stable. The are the birds per se, if you know, there's always this saying that, you know, if a bird falls out of its nest, you're not supposed to touch it or help it up into the nest because the parents reject it. Is there any truth to that?
Zero truth. People get that idea from mammals. Mammals evolved with their primary sense being smell. Birds evolved with their primary sense being vision. And birds have, other than turkey vultures and kiwis, most birds have no sense of smell at all. They're not going to smell the human. If you pick up a baby bird that's fallen from the nest, what's most likely to happen if the parents are around is they're going to dive bomb you because they want you to leave their kid alone. But we re-nest birds all the time. It's the best thing you can do. If you know you have a garden at home and a robin or a sparrow baby has fallen out of the nest, and you can pick the baby up and put it back in the nest. The parents aren't going to reject it. But you mentioned owl boxes, and going back to the previous question, that's another thing people can do to help raptors is, you know, we've fragmented their territory, we've bulldozed it, we've taken it over for our buildings and roads and houses. We've taken away their trees and their nesting spots. If you have a proper location and the right birds around, providing a nest box is a great thing. Everybody thinks of barn owl boxes because barn owls just take so readily. I mean, their name barn owl evolved because they nest in structures. I mean, a box is a natural thing for them. If you're going to do an owl box, make sure it's well built. Make sure you take responsibility for it. And between November and December, clean it out because there's a season's worth of owl pellets that they've regurgitated and poop and prey remains in there. I've, in this last year, I have rescued a total of 18 barn owl babies from 3 different badly made boxes that didn't have drainage in the floor, that didn't have adequate ventilation, that didn't have a heat shield over the roof to keep the sun from baking the occupants inside, that didn't have the proper distance from the floor of the box to the bottom of the opening. In one nest box, there was actually gunk oozing out of the box.
Oh,
The
heavens.
9 babies inside were standing in an inch of liquid gunk that was water, dissolved pellets, and poop that was so acidic it had burned the baby's legs. 8 of the babies made it to the hospital and then eventually were healed and put back in a competently made box. The 9th baby didn't make it. There was another box with 5 kids in it. There was another one with 7 kids in it, all of which were actually death traps. So if you're going to put a box up, make sure you get it from a reputable place or a design from a reputable organization that has endorsed the right dimensions for the species of bird, the right location, the right exposure to the sun, the right size entry hole to keep predators out. All of that goes into it. And it's not just barn owls. Kestrels will nest in boxes. Bluebirds will nest in boxes. Some species of swallows will nest in artificial places like that. And having those birds around is great because the kestrels and the owls keep down the local rodent population. The bluebirds and the swallows keep down the local insect population. And that means there's less rodenticide, less insect poison that you're going to want to put into the environment to control those pests.
Mm.
So nest boxes, if you have the right place for them and you get the best information about size and location, nest boxes can be a good thing too.
There is one lady who says she didn't hear the sounds that were connected with the videos.
Okay.
Would
Did
you
you
be,
hear them?
huh?
Did you hear them?
I heard a bit.
I
I
mean, the
don't,
sounds connected with the videos primarily were the barn owl shrieking and the Cooper's hawk calling. The other
right,
videos, the release videos, didn't have any consequential audio.
right. Okay, so I mean, she can watch the video then and see if she can catch something more than she thought
Yeah,
was there.
yeah. I mean, in terms of audio, the money was on the barn owl. You know, I'm always amazed by that.
Right. Okay, so what else was there that, let me just have oh, we have more. Are you in a okay. There, well, there are very many thank yous and awesome presentation about learning a lot. Excellent presentation.
Well, thank you all.
Oh,
That's nice to hear. Nice to get the
have you ever been approached by young people who want to learn how to do this kind of rescue work? What would you tell them? Where would they go in order to learn, to
Well,
assist?
I do, in the last year, I have taken on a few volunteers, but they're all Raptor colleagues who have experience handling birds. Because of the nature of this, I can get a call at 6:30 in the morning on Sunday. I can get a call at 4 in the afternoon with rush hour on the bridge to go to Oakland, although nowadays rush hour lasts all day anyway. Or I can get a call at 8:30 at night because there's an injured owl. I go. Most people don't have lives or not at a place in their lives where they can just do that. So a combination of my decades of experience trapping and handling raptors, the fact I retired from a real job and have the time to do this, have all enabled me to do this kind of work. I've been training some of my colleagues on some of the specialized capture techniques. They already know how to handle raptors. Many of them work in rehab and they can examine a bird, but there's no real like training opportunity where I could tell a young intern, okay, come to work Wednesday from 8 to 4 o'clock, because I could just be sitting home all day if there are
It's
no calls.
You're
You know,
basically on call 24/7,
yeah, and
365
it's
days a week,
sporadic. It's if
days a week.
it
Yeah,
was 24/7, but predictably, several hours a day, I could take on an apprentice or an intern to train. But if somebody is interested in learning about raptors, do what I did. I learned to do it by volunteering. I'm not a
yeah.
professional biologist, although I play one on TV, as the joke goes. The experience I've had at the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory to learn trapping techniques and handling of wild raptors, the experience I've had in captive situations with educational birds, the experience in rehab, volunteering at WildCare, all contributed to my skills and ability to do this job. So if somebody is interested in raptors, volunteer somewhere where you can do it. And it isn't easy. It's demanding work. But the other thing is, everybody who volunteers in bird work wants to work with raptors, and the senior people get to do it and the new people clean the cages. I mean, that's
Right,
just how
right.
it is.
Well, I
So
was
put in
thinking,
your
with
time.
all your decades of work at this, I mean, and you have such experience that as you say, it's not something that you can actually learn on a 9 to 5 schedule. It's
No,
like,
yeah, no one's going to go to raptor rescue school.
no,
But
but they scare the living
it's a
daylight. I don't know
nice-
how you handle them, because even they look at you with such ferocity that, if I had to handle, I'd probably just collapse on and just faint or something, because they just look, they look so predatory. They look absolutely
they
as
have
though,
evolved to kill animals.
yes, exactly. And it's like
Understand.
meeting a barracuda in the water, and you've met a barracuda and you turn the other way. It's like, excuse me, gotta go to swim the other way. But they do need our help because we've placed obstacles in their way.
Yeah, I agree.
And you've been
It takes like any kind of animal work, it's a calling. It takes a passion to do it.
Yes.
Anyway,
I think we have to let you go, as much as we'd love to have you stay with us for hours and hours and hours and still keep on chatting about all your experiences. You've been more than kind in terms of time and answering so many
it's a
questions.
pleasure. I'm happy to be back at San Pedro Valley Park, even
Yes,
though
we'll need to have
not
you
in
back
person.
and maybe, have a slightly different angle on this, or whatever that you can, or more detail, or perhaps specify a particular birds, of the raptors, whatever you feel will be, but we need to have you back. We need to have you back. So thank you so much, Craig. I really, really appreciate your saying
Well, I'm
yes.
grateful for the opportunity, and thanks to everybody who stuck it out, and keep your eyes on the skies. Watch for those birds.
Yes, yes, indeed. All
Okay,
right. Well,
good
take
night.
care and good night. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Webinar is closing.